You're up.
All right, let's do it live on a beautiful fall Thursday. Autumn is here. Football is here. The Cowboys coming on Sunday as we head down to Big D to take on the Dallas football team. In between now and then, we will get you set over the next couple of hours. Luminaries on the show today. Ed Werder joining the show.
Wow.
Joe Woods will take his presser relatively closely here. Jarvis, Odell. Everybody want to hear from. Of course, I am merely Beau. He is the great Z. How you living, buddy?
It's a big Thursday, the official kickoff to Week 4 in the NFL. And as you mentioned, for the Browns, an opportunity game, a statement game, a chance to really a measuring stick game against the Dallas Cowboys and a very, very explosive offense and a defense that, frankly, has been rather generous of late. And it's going to be, I think, a lot of fun. And Joe Woods, you mentioned we're going to hear from him. He's got his hands full, man. He's got his hands full. We've been doing, talking to people about this game, and it feels like, even when talking to Coach, you mentioned Dak and what they're doing throwing the ball and the crazy yardage they're putting up, and it's normally Zeke Elliott is the lead story when you're talking about the Dallas Cowboys offense, and he's not right now, even though he's having a very, very good start to the season and is one of the best running backs in the NFL. That's just how talented they are. You talk about pick your poison. Sheesh Louise, but fortunately you can score on them too, which is why they find themselves at 1-2,
Yep.
and as we've mentioned, an onside kick away from 0-3.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've been down in games, so they end up just giving up on the run, and they throw it all over the place, and they throw it at a rate that's frankly unprecedented in the history of the league. Dak's on pace for 72,000 passing yards this year, something like that, somewhere in that vicinity. And I know it's high. Feels like it'd be a record.
Yeah, it's on its way. That's right. Record stuff. Maybe we've heard that before. Not sure, but yeah, that's where it is. By 1,000 yards, he's on pace to shatter the record.
Yeah. Well, I had him on pace for 72,000 yards. That would be high. As we get into the OBM Hot Topics, Ohio Business Machine preferred copier provider of your Cleveland Browns of all the X's and O's for your office. Call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. We'll get to our stuff in a second, but the big story in the league today is this Titans-Steelers game postponed indefinitely. More positive tests with the Titans. I will say that I am surprised that this game is postponed. What I thought would happen is I thought they would say if there are 8, 9 Titans who are positive test, you got an expanded practice squad, do the best you can. We got to get this game in because I don't know where they're going to fit this one in down the road. And what I'm interested in is if now this is the precedent, that if a game can't play, we're going to start stacking these games for a week 18 in the schedule.
I'm surprised about it too because my understanding of the expanded practice squad and the reasons why you could have vested veterans on the practice squad was so that you would be able to put a team on the field. And from everything that we understand, the Titans are up to 4 players. They certainly would be able to field a football team and play this game. Now, there is a natural way to do this with this involving the Steelers and the Ravens and the Titans in Week 7 and Week 8, and I'm trying to pull up the tweet that says it, but there's a natural way to fix it, which is, I'm guessing, what the thought process was. But at the same time, you are putting yourself – it is a precedent has been set, and when you think about it from, for example, the Steelers' perspective – and even the Titans' perspective. Now they're going to have to play 13 straight weeks during this era, and with everything that they're dealing with. And I think that has that could be difficult to see how that's going to play out for them. Now, Mike Tomlin today said, when asked about it, said, "I don't care. We're going to take care of our business. We're going to do what we've got to do." But I am also with you in that I am surprised that they are not going to play this game on a Monday. It seemed yesterday, by the way, Beau, when we got off the air, that it was
all the momentum
definitely playing on Monday or Tuesday, but Mike Tomlin thought as of last night, probably Monday. So something is shifted here.
Yeah, Monday at 5. Right. Yeah, I'm surprised because I think it does open up a can of worms for the league if you're going to move every time there's positive tests of this amount of people. And I think we're going to see this a lot in the coming weeks and months. That basically we had 3 weeks where we got to pretend that we weren't playing in a pandemic. If you weren't paying attention to the fact that there was nobody in the stands in most instances, you were able to have your football.
Yep.
And now you have your first major roadblock in it, and I'm surprised as opposed to just powering through the roadblock and saying, hey, I know you got a backup long snapper somewhere on that practice squad, or it's a linebacker, whatever. You got to make do. You got to play this game. Instead of doing that, saying, all right, we're going to move this, because this opens you up for having to juggle a lot as this season goes along. Because I think we'll see a lot of this over the course of the next coming weeks and months.
Yeah, it feels, unfortunately inevitable. And you wonder if they're going to say, the NFL will say, in this case, this is what we did, but we're not wed to, this being the practice for every instance as it comes up and we get more information. We saw, for example, the positive test in Atlanta. I believe it was A.J. Terrell who tested positive and then was out, but nobody else on the team did, and they played, and there have been no subsequent positives for them. Look, we all want this season to end. We've said all along, we don't know what the format will be, what the timing of it will be, etc. You hope this is an isolated thing. You hope that this is something that is used around the league to really reinforce the fragility of what's going on, because it's human nature. Let's be honest about it. It's human nature to say, we've heard so much about this. Well, we just went through training camp, no problem. We've gone through now 3 weeks of the season, no problem, that people naturally maybe let their guards down. What I'm very curious about, and I wonder if it will ever be shared publicly or if it would be at least shared with other teams, is if they're able to ascertain how this came about for the Titans. Where was the, not slip up,
where was the breach
per se, but where did you run into trouble? Yeah. And granted, you can run into trouble doing nothing wrong.
That's right.
Your kids go to school. Perhaps they pick it up at school. Perhaps, somebody from the grocery store, because people still need to get groceries. We're not on a full lockdown, and getting groceries is an essential service. Or maybe the delivery person who brings you your groceries, if you're trying to be ultra safe, somehow transmits it to you. But if they can identify, I wonder if that'll be shared and try to prevent it. But as we know, you're counting on the extended networks of people around. And I think there's a very good point is, what we don't know, and it sounds like some of the people with the Titans are having symptoms. Some of these coaches, it was a good number of coaches, they're not younger individuals.
No.
And that's, the danger. And then they live with, if you're an older person, you probably live with somebody closer to your age. And so then the risk factors, this is still a human issue more than a football issue first and foremost. But I am still surprised that we are seeing a team that would be capable of putting 53 out there. I think maybe the NFL's thinking is, until we really get a handle on this, and this is our first dummy, we're going to err on the extreme side of caution. And what risk is associated with putting a Tennessee Titans team on the field for a game on Monday that might have only had a walkthrough between then and the following game? Now, you could say that's pretty much what teams do when they play a Thursday night game, especially veteran teams. They're going to maybe have a walkthrough or two before they play on 3 days rest, let alone 8 days rest. But it's just, I think erring on the side of caution is what we're seeing here, albeit in a surprising fashion.
Absolutely so. As we turn the attention to our game with Dallas, the injury report is one that has certainly piqued a lot of interest, and there are prominent names on it. And Denzel Ward, in terms of his availability, would be critical to this game on Sunday against the Cowboys. No Kareem Hunt at practice today. This is always where the red flags start to come. You don't see him on that Thursday practice. Joel Bitonio says he's going to go out and give it a go at practice. Your kind of view, big picture, on where we are from the injuries perspective heading into this game against the Cowboys.
Yeah, my view on the Browns' injuries, Kareem Hunt, as we mentioned, and the Dontrell Hilliard move. We looked at it through, two different lenses, and we weren't sure which lens was the lens you really wanted to be or should be looking through it. I think today we're getting a little more clarity that it was probably about more than potentially being available to help in the return game. I think it's partially also being able to help in the event that you do not have Kareem Hunt for this game. And for a running back with a soft tissue injury, you want to see him be able to put in some work at least by Friday. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball. I do think Joel Bitonio will play. I'm going to go through the people that are on the injury report. Joel Bitonio,
go.
I think he's going to be fine. Steve Carlson's on full. He's fine. Jack Conklin, expect him to play. Jarvis, expect him to play. JC, expect him to play. Defensive side of the ball. Claiborne did not practice yesterday. He wasn't even mentioned today. He did play in the game, and I was told was no worse for wear, so I would expect that he will be available. We've got Olivier Vernon putting in a limited again. I think he's ramping up this week. I expect Olivier Vernon to be ready for the Browns, barring a setback, which we all know can happen on any given day. Then you get to the linebacking core. Tay Davis, I am less optimistic about, given what they've said about him. Jacob Phillips' return to practice, if he's available, I think it would be more in a limited fashion, kind of like we saw with Mack. But Mack and Kevin Johnson not on the injury report. And just real quickly, because I know we got to go to the podium here, I think Denzel will likely give it a go again. I think Greedy is probably, unfortunately, still a week away.
All right, here's Joe Woods on his defense from the podium.
Guys are both down.
Scott, if you're able to unmute your line.
I've been there.
He might be on the road to practice. We'll go to Nate Ulrich.
Okay.
Hey, Coach. Obviously Dak Prescott and the Cowboys, number one offense, number one passing offense. What are some of the key points that you're giving your guys this week that you guys really have to watch out for? What makes them such a challenge?
There's a lot of stuff. I think the biggest focus when you play a team like this is that it's about how you execute. There's some different things, that you want to do to try to take away some of the stuff they do well. But the biggest thing for us is everybody doing their job and really just executing the defensive plan, to be honest with you.
What is so impressive about what Dak's been able to do, and just how much of a threat is he, not only with his arm, but with his legs?
He's really, I coached against him last time, it was a couple of years ago. But he reminds me from how he runs the offense like a Phillip Rivers. He does a lot of checks at the line of scrimmage, just getting him into the, proper runs and the right, pass routes. He's really developed. When you watch him, he has complete command of the offense. He's throwing the ball with accuracy. And then when you cover him and you do it all right, then he runs. We're going to have our hands full.
Thanks, Nate. We'll go to Dan Lobby for our next question.
Hey, Coach, it looked like this last game in particular, you guys moved Miles around a lot. And I know you did it against Cincinnati, too. Mm-hmm. That versatility to kind of play him anywhere, even inside sometimes, how does that kind of help that defensive line?
It really helps because, offensively, teams are going to plan for him. So when you move them around, if they plan on sliding the protection to him or, chipping him, when you move him around, it creates problems for them because they don't know exactly where he's going to be. And it also gives our other guys an opportunity to get some one-on-ones. So moving around has been beneficial for us, so we're going to continue to do that.
Does he kind of have the freedom to kind of decide where he wants to line up on particular plays?
No. No, we control that. So yeah, we have good plans. Coach Kiffin does a good job coming up with just different creative ways to get Miles free, but also to get our D-line free as well.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. We'll go to Mary Kay Cabot for our next question.
Hey, Coach. It looks like maybe, Zeke really hasn't kind of gotten untracked yet or really had sort of his breakout game. What's so good about Zeke? What are you guys expecting from him? And can you, maybe not necessarily be lulled into a false sense of security with the numbers so far?
Yeah, I promise you that is not the case. We know we have a big challenge ahead of us. And when you watch his runs, guys will hit him at the line of scrimmage, but when the run's over, it's 9 yards, 10 yards, 12 yards. So he hasn't really, gotten a big one that everybody's looking for consistently. But all his runs he's getting good chunks of yards. So he's he runs with good balance. He has power. So we really have to get a lot of guys to the ball and gang tackle him. And we definitely don't want this game to be his breakout game.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mary Kay. Nate Ulrich.
Joe, have you gotten any sense from Myles Garrett about what this means to him going back home to Arlington, Texas to play? Have you talked about it with him at all?
He hasn't said anything about it. I don't know if he's talked to the guys on the team about it, but he hasn't said anything to me at this point. I just think he's looking forward to the challenge. He's playing a really good football team.
Tony Grossi, you have our next question.
Hi, Joe. We know their top 3 receivers over there in Dallas are dangerous. Then they spring to Cedric Wilson in the last game. And you got a situation with Denzel not practicing and Greedy not playing yet. How much do those 4 wides really tax your cornerback situation at this point in time?
It creates issues. You have to account for it and just have something prepared if they want to come out and do that. So we'll be ready, for that. But yeah, some of the receivers you see is just watching. Who's 11? You see him making big plays. It's like, who's that guy? I know about the other guys, but they're very deep at receiver. They're very talented. But that's the NFL. I've coached DBs for a long time. You don't get a break, So it's the next challenge. Our guys have stepped up and played well. So they'll look forward to the challenge and hopefully we can play well.
And the promotion of Jovan Moffett, what caused that? What led to that? And do you see a need there for him to swing into action?
Yeah, that's a better question for AB. From our standpoint, defensively, we like who he is as a young player. He has versatility, played multiple positions for us throughout training camp, so we feel like he has a bright future. And you never know with injuries and things of that nature. He may have to be a guy that we bring up, sooner than later.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mary Kay, back to you.
Speaking of Denzel, how challenging is it to game plan for a team like this, knowing, first of all, not knowing for sure if Denzel is going to be able to play, and then just the whole notion of a groin injury with the cornerback and just knowing that he really needs to be able to run, and how tough is this to try to go into this game not knowing what you have or what you don't have?
Yeah, hopefully he's fine. We're going to get him out on the field today. So I know he battled through some injuries in training camp, some little nagging injuries, also the last game. So I think if we can get him out there the next 2 days and he moves around pretty well, that'll bode well for us. But, if he's not available, it's just next man up. I mean, that's all you can really say because you can't protect everybody. You just have to go in with a good scheme and put guys in the best position you feel they can have success.
How did KJ do in his first action last week?
He had a little rust. There was a little rust. So, but he did some good things. He just hasn't played in a long time. So getting back out there, just getting a feel for the speed of the game. He did some good things, but he'll definitely make some improvements going into this week.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mary Kay. We'll go to Scott Petrick.
Hey, Joe, what about Mac Wilson? Was he able to shake off enough, and do you think you'll be able to get more reps out of him this week?
Yeah, that's the plan, is to get him more reps. So we have a plan for him in base, also in sub defense. With those guys coming back, we really didn't want to put too much on them. Kevin probably got a few more reps than we would like for him to have when Greedy came out, or excuse me, when Denzel came out. But we'll definitely get Mac some more reps this week.
Back to Nate Ulrich.
Hey, Joe, another playing time question. I know we asked you about Ronnie Harrison last week. What are the challenges he's facing in carving out more playing time and a bigger role?
Yeah, we're moving in that direction. It's just his comfort with the defense. He's picking it up pretty fast. He's very intelligent. But it's really just the game reps, getting him out there because game's a lot different than practice. But we do have a plan to get him on the field more, kind of evaluate where he's at, and just hope we can continue to do that and make him more part of our defense.
Last call for questions for Coach. We can take one more.
Stand by.
We're all set. Thanks for the time today, Coach Woods.
You're up.
Yeah, you have a great day.
All right, this is the biggest challenge in terms of what we, as big a challenge as Baltimore is, in terms of what we haven't done well to this point, which is, the pass defense side of it, and giving that up. This is a full day, and especially in the slot where we really need to be healthy at corner. We really have to be healthy at corner.
Yeah, I would say that, our pass defense, because of the pressure generated by our line, has been good. We've limited people to 6.6 yards per attempt, which is sixth best in the NFL from a defensive standpoint, which is stunning. And it doesn't necessarily feel that way. And you go back to week 1, and Lamar Jackson really knew what he was able to, he did what he wanted to, 20 of 25, I think 275 and a few touchdowns. Week 2, you held Joe Burrow through it, over 50 times to 5 yards an attempt, and then last week, obviously, with Haskins. But this is as complete and as explosive an offense from a traditional light up the scoreboard way. The Ravens light up the scoreboard, but do it in their unique brand of offense. This is, you're dealing with one of the elite offenses in the NFL as we understand offenses. They can throw it 50 times. They can run it 50 times. They've got 3 awesome receivers, Cedric Wilson saying, hey, I'm not bad either, with what he was able to do last week. So this is the toughest test, period. And I think you need to, as you pointed out, it's the middle of the field. I think the changes they made last week with that dime package, Malcolm Smith and Ronnie Harrison paid immediate dividends. Smith getting an interception. I thought Carl Joseph played a very nice game. The concern is the top of the defense, which is Andrew Sendejo. We've only given up one play over 40 yards. That was in week 1. We haven't seen anybody else really test that. That's something that Burrow has not had success with so far this year. So that, in terms of a strength, that hasn't matched up because he's struggled on the vertical ball so far. Haskins, we knew that wasn't going to be an issue. This week it is an issue. They lead the league in pass plays of more than 40 yards. They lead the league in pass plays of more than 20 yards. And so that and they're going to be in 11 personnel all game. CeeDee Lamb's going to be on the field. Michael Gallup's going to be on the field. Cooper's going to be on the field all game. And so it's that nickel, it's the linebackers as a part of a lot of the zones that we play that'll end up getting matched up receivers, and then it's the safeties. And outside, you felt pretty good. That's where, Money Mitch and Denzel have played well. But this is a game where it's really important to be able to get Kevin Johnson back in the nickel. Or maybe it's a game for more MJ Stewart if, they thought they overdid Kevin Johnson in his first game back. Mack Wilson getting more reps at linebacker. But I think if you're going to win this game on the defensive side, you're going to have to come up with a few turnovers. The takeaways are key. And, there's something very interesting I found about Dak Prescott and some of the pregame research that was shared with us. And this is, to me, a fascinating stat. We know how important turnovers are, and they're critically important. But with Dak Prescott, for some reason, turnovers really seem to play a bigger role for him. When his team has 0 giveaways, he's 27-6 as a starter. That's an 82% winning percentage. Which is 15% better than all other starting quarterbacks. This is since 2016. With 1 giveaway, he's 11-7, which is a 61% winning percentage. The NFL average during that time is 49%. So he's with 0 or 1, he's really tough to beat. He's 38-13. With 2 or more takeaways or giveaways from his offense, 3-13, below the NFL average. So you have got to, from a defensive standpoint, this is going to be a game about getting pressure with your defensive front organically, and it's going to be about takeaways because they're too good otherwise. They will score seemingly at will because of their ability to move. Chunk plays we know are so important. They do it better than anybody in the NFL right now.
They just throw bombs. I mean, they just go deep. It's really incredible what they do, and it will be put the back end to a test. Nobody knows this franchise. Nobody knows this team, this owner, everything about it better than Ed Werder. It's a great pleasure to have him coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Elk and Elk Serious Lawyers for serious injuries. Call 1-800-ELK-OHIO today for a free case review. Elk and Elk is a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. When you go behind enemy lines with the Dallas Cowboys, there's only one name you want to hear from, and it is our next guest. It is the great Ed Werder from ESPN calling in on the Fifth Third Money Line. Ed, thanks so much for the time. Give us a temperature of the place down there. 1-2, an onside kick from 0-3, and yet explosive offensively. Where are we at in Big D right now with this team?
Yeah, I've covered all 3 games and of the Mike McCarthy era to this point, and I think the biggest takeaway is this is a team that under this coach wants to take a much more aggressive approach on offense in terms of throwing the football. And, Mike McCarthy's best player in Green Bay, whether it was Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers, has always been a quarterback. And in Dallas, it seems like he believes Dak Prescott's his best player. The previous staff thought Ezekiel Elliott was the guy to build the offense around. So I think we're seeing a bit of a transition in that regard, a little distorted by the fact that they've played, from behind so often this season. But I think the biggest concern is the defense. The defense has been horrific. The defense has allowed the most points in 3 games in Cowboys history to start a season, and they've allowed the most points in any 2-game stretch the past 2 weeks against the Falcons and the Seahawks than they've allowed since Tom Landry's final season in Dallas. So to me, that's the weak point on this team at this point is the defense, especially the secondary.
And you talked about that secondary at 9 touchdowns through the air the last 2 weeks, nearly 800 yards, not a single interception. There are a lot of names that you recognize up front to get after the quarterback, and we know Alvin Smith's playing well, and a lot of names you recognize on the back. But why is it not coming together, and why are they struggling so much, in your opinion?
Well, I think obviously personnel is an issue. I think another factor is that this unique pandemic off season that condensed, eliminated mini camps and preseason games. The Cowboys are supposed to play 5 preseason games, and you're supposed to get advantages when you have a first-year coaching staff in terms of starting your off-season program earlier, and that was lost to all these teams that made coaching hires this off-season, including McCarthy, who'd been out of football for a year. And so he really didn't get a chance to see his players at game speed, and they didn't tackle at all until week 1. And so I think that's been a difficulty. I think the fact that the offense has turned the ball over on the defense and they failed on a few fake punts in their own end of the field, I think they've just failed across the board to play complementary football. And you're right that they've given up points. They haven't had control of games to the point that if you're not playing with a lead, you're not going to be able to rush the passer on a consistent basis. That's why Everson Griffin only has 1 sack, and DeMarcus Lawrence doesn't have any sacks. Aldon Smith leads the league. He's been their one consistent player on defense, but they just haven't created that opportunity for themselves because they haven't played complementary football, and they've had some injuries. They got 2 corners who are their starting corner and their nickel corner, who are both on short-term IR. They lost Leighton Vander Esch, who was a very athletic player in the middle of the defense who was calling the plays for the first time. He lasted 1 quarter. So those are some of the examples I would cite of things that have not gone the way that they expected and could explain how poorly they've played on defense to this point.
And you talked about that transition over to the Dak Prescott throwing the ball, being ultra-aggressive, which it's been fun to watch. It hasn't necessarily worked out in terms of wins. They did get the 1, but it's been fun to watch how explosive they are. But I'm wondering if this week they get if the goal is to get back to what they've been the last few years. Is there a concerted effort to get Ezekiel Elliott going early, and will that be something you expect they'll try to do Sunday against the Browns?
It's kind of what the Browns kind of adopted successfully the game plan the Cowboys have had for the past 4 or 5 years, which was let's protect our defense, let's run the football, let's not ask too much out of our quarterback, let's play to the strength of our team, which is our offensive line and our running back. I agree with you. It'll be interesting to see if that's what they do. I asked Mike McCarthy today, I said, Dak Prescott leads the NFL in virtually every passing category there is. How much of this is that's the way you want to play, and how much of it is you've been playing from, double-digit deficits the last two games. And he said, in an ideal situation, we'd have about 70 plays a game on offense, and I would like to throw on 40 of those and run on 30. And that's a balance they really only achieved in that opener against the Rams, which is the game that they, were able to maintain close contact with and actually led briefly in that game. But if you look at the numbers, they've played with a lead for only like 13 minutes out of 180 football minutes this year, and only the Jets and Jaguars have had a lead for less time than the Cowboys have had it. So I'll be interested, like you are, because there's two ways to go about this when you can't play defense. And the first one is to just throw it and try and outscore everybody, like Seattle does. Russell Wilson has a 3-0 team. He's thrown 14 touchdown passes in 3 weeks, and that's overcome the fact that Seattle is last in the NFL in defense and allowed the most yards in a 3-game span in NFL history. So do you take that approach, or do you take the more traditional approach and say, hey, let's shorten the game, let's control the football, win time of possession, and take the approach that the Cowboys have generally taken when they've had success, and that's build a game plan around Ezekiel Elliott. I think Mike wants to move more in that direction, but I don't think he wants to be as close. I don't think he wants to do it to the extent that the previous staff did it.
Talking with the great Ed Werder from ESPN. And Ed, we know that this Cowboys offensive line for a long time has been the staple. Little bit banged up. What's the status of that line headed into the game? And then I'll just follow up with a specific player on it. But what's the status of this line headed into this game?
Yeah, they've played with 5 different offensive line combinations to this point, and last week made a huge change in the middle of the game and actually moved Zach Martin, who is the really only holdover starter they have from last year, moved him from right guard out to right tackle, and he handled it well. But they're expecting and he's expecting to play back at guard this week. Travis Frederick retired in the offseason, so Joe Looney has been the starting center. Connor Williams, the left guard, has been a player who's been a point of weakness throughout the early part of his career. And Tyron Smith and La'el Collins, are starting tackles, have combined to play 1 game so far. La'el Collins hasn't played at all. It isn't coming off IR this week. Tyron Smith may come back this week from a neck injury.
Would Terrence Steele be back at right tackle? And I know he's had some problems at times, and whenever you have to line up against Myles Garrett, it's tough enough for anybody, but I imagine that would be a tough matchup for Steele.
Yeah, he's an undrafted player who amazingly won that position with La'el Collins being absent, even though there weren't any preseason games for the new coaching staff to evaluate him. He still won the job. That speaks to me the level of their desperation to find somebody who could fill in adequately there. And he did until last week. And he was also apparently ill. My expectation is that they're going to move Brandon Knight over there. He started at left tackle the past 2 weeks when Tyron Smith's been hurt. But he also started at right tackle last year when La'el Collins missed the Jets game. And he was pretty effective. So I think his experience, although it's not significantly more than Steele, I think they feel a little more confident with Brandon Knight, and my expectation is he'll start at right tackle if he doesn't have to start at left tackle. And they do have to be concerned about Myles Garrett because he's the best pass rusher they've played, and the Browns do a good job of moving him around to find the best matchup. And he can come off either side if they're playing Terrence Steele and Brandon Knight, but if they have Tyron Smith, I assume he'd play off the defensive left most of the time against Brandon Knight.
Ed, we played 1 road game. It was at Baltimore. It was in front of nobody. We played 2 home games in front of 6,000. You could feel them. What's it going to be like for the Browns on Sunday down in Dallas?
Well, the Cowboys played week 2 against the Falcons at home, and they had the largest crowd of the early pandemic season so far at like 21,000. Jerry's been evasive about what he expects the number to be this week, but he has talked about continuing to increase the number of fans at games. And both the players and coaches felt like it made a difference to have even that number of fans there, which is, a real fraction of what they normally have. I mean, the Cowboys led the NFL in average home attendance last year at 90,000, and that was 12,000 more than the second place team, the Jets. So they still have a very small, 20% of their normal crowd in the building. But I expect there to be a little bit more than that this time. And certainly the Cowboys players and coaches have felt like it helped them in that game coming back against the Falcons, but it's certainly not what teams are typically accustomed to facing when they come to Dallas.
Ed, we know about the passion in Dallas. We know about the pressure in Dallas. Is this a game that there is, perhaps more pressure on a team that's 1-2, very close to 0-3 than you might expect going into Week 4 with the Browns coming to town?
Well, the last time the Cowboys were 1-4 to start a season was 2010, and they went 6-10 in that season. So, yeah, I think there's a real recognition on their part that this is a game that they really need to win. And it's the first game of 3 that they play in succession at home. And given the way they've started, I think they view all these next 3 games as really critical. Mike McCarthy does believe in creating a home field advantage, and he believes you have to do that every year. And clearly the Cowboys have not created that to this point because they, like you said, they were an onside kick recovery away from losing to the Falcons. It took a historic comeback for them to be 1-2 rather than 0-3. So, yeah, I think they'll attach a great deal of priority, emphasis, and energy on beating the Browns.
Ed, it is a great pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time today.
Hey, I enjoyed the conversation. Thanks, and hope we get to do it again.
Look forward to that very, very much. The great Ed Werder from ESPN calling in on the Fifth Third money line. It's so interesting. As we were talking to Ed and you hear his voice, I cannot even count. I would have to think of all the ESPN NFL reporters, I've watched him the most by such a wide margin just because of what the Cowboys were in the 90s. That would be the guy.
It was Ed Werder. Yeah, to me, Ed Werder and Sal Pal. Yeah, like they're in their own category.
Yep. Those are the 2 guys that they were just on television
always
my entire formidable football life. They were. Yeah,
that was the era where when I wasn't working on Sundays per se, I would watch Sunday NFL Countdown. That was my show to get ready, and let's go live to Ed Werder and Sal Pal, where it felt like at every game of consequence that was happening because they involved, for Sal Pal's more anywhere in the Northeast, and with Ed Werder, the Cowboys were always a game of consequence.
Yep. That was it. What they said, and you set fantasy lineups. You did everything based on what those guys did. That was great. Great to have him on, and a reminder that all guests, including Ed Werder, who appear on CBD, appear via the Fifth Third money line. Fifth Third Bank, making Cleveland Browns daily a Fifth Third better. We will hit the matchup coming up next. Our defense, their offense. There are ways to attack it. Z's been hinting at this. We will get to that coming up next. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. At Union Home Mortgage, our loan officers go into overtime to deliver a world-class mortgage experience that'll make you a raving fan. Find home financing options you need with the customer service you want. Visit UnionHomeMortgage.com to get a mortgage you'll rave about. Union Home Mortgage, promises kept. Union Home Mortgage Corp. NMLS 2229 is an equal housing lender. The Browns defense versus the Cowboys offense. This is we do this matchup every week at this time. This is one where you really need to see who's penciled in, because that's going to be the key, especially in the secondary. Who's penciled in to try to match up with these receivers?
It's more than – I think it's going to define the Browns' ability to win the game, get off the field on third downs, generate pressure on Dak Prescott, and create turnovers. And Ed Werder gave you a little insight that their left guard is struggling. They don't know if they're going to have Tyron Smith. Now, he is going to practice a little bit today. Their tackles are struggling. And as I said many times, this game is all about generating pressure on Dak Prescott, but not from blitzing. Against the blitz, 10 yards per attempt, over 110 quarterback rating. You've got to do it organically. When you do it organically, he's completing 40% of his passes, quarterback rating in the 40s. When he don't get after him, he's completing almost 80% of his passes over 10 yards an attempt, quarterback rating 117. So this game, their injuries on the offensive line, the strength of our defensive line, that's going to be a matchup that we really have got to win. The best way to help your secondary is to not give him much time to throw and to get after him, harass him, make him uncomfortable. Because if he has time to throw, they're going to pick us apart. They are. Their talent is such that they are going to be able to do what they want offensively, and we've seen it. They're on pace, for a historic season. The only one that's like really on par would be 1,000 times better, Lamar Jackson, or 1,000,000 times better Lamar Jackson, as you point out. That's it. So this team is so good on offense. We mentioned they've also got, Ezekiel Elliott, who we all know is one of the greatest running backs in the NFL. But it's going to be imperative that our defense gets after this offense. Now, our defensive line alone has been so good, just the guys up front. And we all talk about Miles. Sheldon Richardson's been spectacular in his own right. 7 pressures, 2 sacks. But it's that defensive line getting after him. And so far this year, the front four, 48 pressures and 7 sacks through the first 3 games. That's incredible. Of the turnovers we've generated, most of them directly attributable to our defensive line. You think about Miles' sack strip fumbles. You think about Larry Ogunjobi's fumble forced against in week number 1 against the Ravens. You think about pressures that have led to interceptions from Miles and company. They've been directly responsible, and they need to dominate this game. Again, 43% completions, quarterback rating of 43 for Dak when he's under pressure, 76% completions, 9 yards attempt, quarterback rating of 118 when he's not. That's going to be it. Olivier Vernon, I expect back. Hopefully he brings, he's fresh, brings his A game, a guy who knows what it's like to play the Cowboys with his time with the Giants. That's going to be incredible. It is the crucial matchup of this game. We need to dominate up front, because when you dominate up front, you also hinder the opponent's running game. And for Zeke Elliott, as good as he's been this year, 3.7 yards a carry is not typical Zeke. Nick Chubb's averaging 2 yards a carry more than Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, no, I think what you think about what this is why I want to know who's in the secondary, because I think about the Bengals game. And I think about how that offensive line was dreadful, and this offensive line significantly better than that, even with the issues they have. But that offensive line's dreadful for Cincinnati, and we were able to wreak a lot of havoc, but Joe was able to make a lot of plays, and a lot of that stuff came from the slot. And so how have we fixed that in 2 weeks? Because this team has a veteran quarterback who's playing at a higher level certainly than Joe Burrow is, and they've got more talent on the perimeter by a wide margin than what Cincinnati has, and they're better up front. So what have we fixed between then and now, and are we getting healthy, especially on the perimeter and especially in the slot?
All right, so what I would say is, yes, Kevin Johnson. Now, we hope to be able to return him to what he was supposed to be. And that's what's crazy. We haven't seen.
That's critical.
Take Grant out of it. We lost Grant for the season. Even take Greedy out of it at this point, because Money Mitch, there's zero to say. And I'm a Greedy Williams fan, but there's nothing to say he's going to come in and play at the level, let alone better, than what we've gotten from Money Mitch the first
No.
3 weeks. So Money Mitch is playing like an
Agreed.
absolute plus starter. Denzel's playing like a plus starter. The issues have come on the back end with Sendejo. The issues have come from the linebacking core, which did a better job last week. Malcolm Smith playing more on passing downs. Ronnie Harrison playing some dimebacker. Mac Wilson returns, so you hope for help there. And issues have come from the slot. And Tavier Thomas plays his heart out. And Tavier Thomas was involved in some critical plays. Critical plays. Special teams ace. He's a good tackler in the open field and recovered the fumble.
On the Joseph pick.
As you texted me, Johnny on the spot. Right on.
On it.
Needed it. And so he's done great things, but that's not what he is. He's not on an NFL roster because of his performance as a slot corner. He's on an NFL roster and on our roster because he's one of the best special teams players in the NFL. MJ Stewart has had more time. I think they're more comfortable putting him on the field. He's at least started. He's played in this league. Kevin Johnson, though, getting Money Mitch, Kevin Johnson, and Denzel Ward on the field together as much as possible, I think is the most important thing for our pass defense that could happen outside of what you're doing up front. I'm talking from just a pure personnel standpoint, those three on the field. This is likely our first chance to see that. But again, one of the challenges is, and Kevin Stefanski and Joe Woods are facing, is how do you rep Kevin Johnson? Do you rep Kevin Johnson in the slot and hope that Denzel is definitely able to go so that you would have Denzel on the outside with Money Mitch and Kevin Johnson getting all his slot reps for CeeDee Lamb? Or do you rep Kevin Johnson on the outside because Denzel limited in practice typically means he's not participating in the team portions. So he's the one who would be playing outside if Denzel's not truly on the field. So do you rep him outside? Do you split it up somehow and give him some outside reps and some inside reps? But if you do that, you're probably repping outside somebody who is very unlikely to play outside corner for you in the game. So that to me that's a challenge. That's
critical.
How do you work that out? Because Kevin hasn't been back long.
No.
And they need we play so much zone that it's the communication, it's the understanding of the passing off guys and the talking. And my biggest concern is you're still not, no matter what, going to be able to get enough reps with these guys together because Denzel being limited takes him off the practice field. It probably kicks Kevin Johnson outside. So Kevin Johnson's not going to get as many reps inside this week no matter what. And so now in the game, if Denzel's up, doesn't Kevin Johnson immediately slide back in the nickel? And he's a veteran. He's a guy who's been in the league for 5 years. So you hope that, okay, he can just do what he has to do. But we still haven't gotten the exposure and the reps to these things that you would want to have, especially going against a team that can throw it like this, which brings us back to the beginning, which is the D-line's got to dominate.
Got to get home, baby. Got to get home. And the other thing is, and Dak does this even better than Joe, you've got to be able to keep him in the pocket too, because he will take off and run for first downs. He did it consistently in the first part of the season, and especially around the goal line, he's very, very adept at being able to run and sniff out the paint on that end. So in terms of, as we laid that out for you, the other antidote to that is control the ball, control the clock, dominate offensively, and we'll get into that matchup a little bit later. The man in charge of that is Alex Van Pelt. He's our offensive coordinator. He joins, we will play his press conference coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, hour 2 here on Cleveland Browns Daily, and Beau Bishop here from my great friends at Raising Cane's. On game day, pretty simple. Go for the win with Raising Cane's chicken fingers. Stack your roster with delicious, hand-battered, cooked-to-order chicken fingers and cane sauce. Huddle up with crispy, crinkle-cut fries, coleslaw, buttery Texas toast. Top it all off with freshly made tea and lemonade. Visit the newest Raising Cane's on Brook Park Road in North Olmsted. It's right behind Great Northern Mall. You cannot miss it, and you wouldn't want to. Raising Cane's chicken fingers, one love. Lots of love for our offensive coordinator, Alex Van Pelt from R Media. Here is that session from earlier today.
Alex, after
Both down.
what do you like that you've seen from Baker? Maybe where's one or two areas you want to see him improve upon based on the way he's played?
The thing I see is a constant improvement each week, and that's what we're looking for from that position. Obviously, he's it was a tough start in Baltimore, no question. Presented a lot of issues for us offensively, but then the following week in Cincinnati, you saw, a solid performance, and then he capped it off with another one back-to-back. So there's just a consistency. He's getting a better understanding of what we're asking him to do within the system, and he's growing each week within the system.
How have you seen defenses approach you through the first 3 games? Have there been a lot of similarities between those teams?
You see some of it. You see last week there was an emphasis on taking away the play action keep game, the nakeds and keepers, so the ends were rushing up the field wider, and not respecting the run as much, which opened up some big holes for us in the run game. So you're starting to see teams do that a little bit more. But like I said last week, it's really pick your poison. You chase down the line, or you play the quarterback, and that's Baker's done a great job all season of continuing to carry out his fakes, so they look the same on every play, whether it's a run or play action keep.
Hey, Alex, could you touch on just how good your offensive line has been blocking in the run game, and especially when you run those plays where you're pulling your guards or your tackles?
It's been they've been very impressive. We have a really good mix. Coach Callahan's done an excellent job of putting together that run plan every week with Stump. Mixing in the zone game with the gap schemes when we're pulling people. Our line has done an outstanding job of both, really. We're well suited to do both. I thought our pullers last week were very effective. I think Joel in particular had a really good feel and does a great job when he gets out on his pulls. Also Wyatt. So all of our guys have the ability to play the wide zone game with their strength and speed, and then also the agility to get on the edge when they decide to pull. So, I think right now we've got a good mix going of both.
The last 2 weeks you've been able to grind out opponents in the fourth quarter. I think you've thrown it 5 times combined. How confident, though, are you if you get in a situation where you got to air it out in the fourth quarter?
We're confident. We're very confident. We have talented players outside. Quarterback's a talented player. Our tight ends are a talented group. Our running backs catch the ball well out of the backfield. We've just been in these situations now where we're informing an offense at the end of the game, so we haven't been required to throw it. There will be times this year, obviously, when we will. But we're excited when that comes as well. But we'd rather have the lead and run the ball out to burn the clock up at the end. But we're very realistic in the fact that we know that we'll be in some situations where we'll have to rely on the pass game, and we're capable of doing that, obviously.
Nick Chubb said earlier this week that he doesn't, really care about being talked about as one of the best running backs in the NFL, because obviously Ezekiel Elliott's going to be on the other side this week. And, I think Batonio said today that he's never heard Nick say a word in the huddle. What have you learned about Nick's personality and just his demeanor and what that says about him as a player and how that all translates to just the entire Nick Chubb experience?
Yeah, what a great teammate he is. I mean, just a true pro in every sense. And his attention to detail, he's all work. There's no nonsense. He's not a guy that needs accolades or really cares. He just does everything the right way you ask him. His approach has been outstanding. It's a pleasure to be around him and see the way he works, his work ethic, and the way that he just approaches everything about the game. He's obviously extremely talented. Of course, he wouldn't want to be listed as one of the top backs, but he is in my mind, and I'm very excited that we have him on our team because he does everything the way you want to do.
Obviously, Kareem's a great compliment, and they're the only tandem in the NFL with each over 200 rushing yards. But if Kareem can't play because he's still out with the groin injury, Do you envision, Nick taking on more of a workhorse load, or would you really want to get one of those other guys, Coach Stefanski called them understudies, into the Kareem Hunt role?
Yeah, no, I think we'll see how the game goes. If he has to be the workhorse and carry it, he's definitely capable of doing that. Obviously, we'd like to keep him fresh as possible. So Dearness, Dontrell will get their opportunities as well if Kareem can't go. They're definitely capable understudies, so to speak, and they're ready to roll as well. I know they're excited if they get the chance, and they'll go in and be productive as well. But if Nick needs to carry the load, I think he's in a position where he could do that if need be.
Alex, what were your years like with Mike McCarthy in Green Bay, and what are some of the kind of main things you learned and that you kind of apply to your coaching?
Yeah, there's a ton. Learned a lot from Coach McCarthy. We were together a long time before that as well at the University of Pittsburgh when he was a graduate assistant, so I had a long relationship with Mike. But I take a lot of the stuff now that offensively and just philosophy and teaching. A lot of that I learned from Mike in Green Bay for sure. He's a hell of a football coach.
He said when he studied Baker last year and then now, he noticed the footwork change. I mean, is that something that was kind of common between you guys?
Yes. I mean, it just coming from the pure West Coast that we grew up in under Coach Paul Hackett, it was all about footwork and timing and rhythm. So I'm glad he noticed that.
Hey, Coach, I want to ask you real quick about Kadarius Hodge and the way he's been able to expand his role on offense under the new staff. Can you kind of just explain what you guys have liked so much about him?
He tries to do everything right. He's in the right place at the right time. He's assignment sound. He's got the skill to make the plays when you call his number. He does a lot of the dirty work in the run game. His ability to finish down the field on every single play. He's another guy you would group in that Nick Chubb category. Just does everything the right way that you ask him to do it.
Coach, Jarvis reached that 100-game milestone last week. What has he shown you in this recovery and return from the hip surgery, just kind of in his desire to
30
anytime?
Yeah, no, he's been very impressive. Jarvis Juice is another guy that he has a great knack for just playing football, being in the right place, understanding coverages, understanding where he fits into the route schemes. Another guy that's tremendous in the run game, his physicality that he brings, his blocking, and his finish as well.
Stand by.
Tribute to him that he's out there after what he's gone through this offseason. I know he's probably not still 100%, but he goes out and gives everything he has every week. And, we're glad to have him.
You're up.
You think about the job that Alex has done. You think of 16 to 23 the last 2 weeks. Z, from your quarterback, no turnovers out of Baker Mayfield last week. Odell helping with that, knocking the one down. But a quarterback that is starting to really get it. And then the question becomes, we'll get into this a little bit later, do you have that next gear to shift into where you can throw the ball down the field and make some plays? Because that's really what's missing is just that next gear.
Yeah, that's the one thing keeping us from being, even though we put up 30 points back-to-back, from being that totally feared complete offense. And I think that's the opportunity this week to unlock that and build the confidence on that is very much it's here. I mean, as Ed Werder told us, we're talking historically bad Dallas Cowboys defense right now, and they've seen some bad ones during their time. So this is the week to kind of unlock that, open it up, and really, I do think at some point it's just natural. Winning does cure everything. It does. Mm-hmm. Mostly. You got to throw
I agree.
Your guys that are doing a lot of dirty work and that are getting a combined, I would imagine the group of Odell, Jarvis, and Austin Hooper are receiving probably less than half the number of targets per game as that trio combined that they're accustomed to.
Total targets for those three less than half. Yes, correct. I have no problem with that.
I would guess,
right.
just off the top of my head, if you were to look back through their careers, we're probably talking about, between the three of them, an average of, I'd probably say 27 targets per game.
I think so. Yeah,
and we're throwing
double
20
digits with Odell, and you're right around there with Jarvis, and
10 and probably 7 for Hoop. Right. So maybe even 30. Yeah. We're throwing the ball 23 times a game. And it's fun. Their time is going to come, but that time, it does need to be sprinkled in. And one thing that I will say that I find incredibly impressive about Kevin Stefanski, and it's something that it's a common sense thing when you say it out loud, but it's also something that is not common sense, as anybody who's covered the NFL for any period of time knows, which is Kevin Stefanski knows that every week is a unique puzzle to unlock, and your modus operandi as an offense needs to change week to week to exploit the weaknesses of your opponent and as much as you can avoid or at least try to mitigate the strengths of your opponent on defense. There are many coaches that say, this is what I do, this is what we're doing, and we're going to do this every week, and period. Kevin Stefanski's not like that. And I think that, when you see a game where there is the opportunity to maybe open it up a little bit more, I think we're going to see that. Because, again, if you're talking about, getting 13 targets in 3 games for Jarvis and having 12 catches off of those 13 targets and putting up over 150 yards, that's good. But it would be when you're a playmaker and you have that much belief in your abilities, and Jarvis, Hoop, and Odell Beckham have 10 Pro Bowls between the 3 of them, and the style of this offense, it is difficult to imagine them putting up the stats needed thus far that from what we've seen to continue their Pro Bowl streaks.
Correct.
And that matters on some level to individuals. It does.
Sure it does.
They want to win, but the business of the NFL is that you could be here today, gone tomorrow, and your value is in many ways linked directly to your production. So I do think that, it is important and not at the expense of winning. And frankly, I think these guys, if we win 3-2 and we're 3-1, potentially, near the top of our division with the chance to, move in and be right there when you go to Pittsburgh, that matters more than anything. But they're still human. They still have goals. They still have aspirations. They still have belief in their own talent that, what? If you're Odell, Jarvis, Austin Hooper, getting me the ball helps us win. It's done it in the past in my career.
That's right. It's human nature, to your point, and use you for example, right? Elite shooter in your basketball career, in your youth, elite shooter, and you like to win. But if you went through a game and you were playing with a bunch of guys who just like going to the hoop over and over and over again, and you just stood in the corner and went, hey, every once in a while, like you do, anybody, and this any of you, I don't care what you do in your life, whatever you do in competition, you want to contribute. You want to feel like you're contributing.
Of course.
And they can say, well, Nathan, don't worry about it. You're a decoy. Because you're standing out there, the defense has to go with you, which allows for us to drive and get layups. And you're like, okay, but I'd like to get a couple of shots off a game. Let me eat. Let the kid eat a little bit.
Yeah, if you actually let me make that 3, it's going to open up the lane even more. Just give me a little
even more.
Let me knock that one down for you.
It's just human nature, man. It's that simple. We'll get into the breakdown of this offense versus that Dallas defense, which is porous, coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.
You're up.
Rumpke Waste Recycling, family-owned, operated since 1932, and they've been in business for 87 years, keeping neighborhoods clean and green. Their customers, employees, and communities are all part of the family. Visit Rumpke.com to learn more. Before we get into the Cowboys' defense versus our offense, which will be a key part of this game, is how many points we can score against the defense that's given up a lot. The Good Morning Football crew had a little conversation about this Dallas football team this morning. Let's have a listen to that.
This was a big thing on Twitter yesterday because
both down.
Compares it to what Mahomes and Wilson can do and then brings up Romo's name and everyone's like, whoa. And then Cowboys beat writers are like, no, read it in context. He actually explains it. Doesn't matter. The fact that he's bringing up Wilson and Mahomes and Romo and explaining that they get these wins and Dak has not been able to get these wins is something that I have to say, hey, my red flag goes up here. That's not great to hear from the owner. And yet I can't blame any of these Cowboys losses on Dak Prescott. If anything, I would love to know if the Cowboys defense plans to show up this season. What a nightmare it is watching this defense week to week. Cowboys have the 30th ranked defense in the NFL, allowing 32 points per game. And I know Van Der Esch is out with the collarbone, and I know Sean Lee's out with the sports hernia. But when are we going to get the step-up guys? When are we going to get the players that really elevate their game? Aldon Smith is maybe the comeback player of the year. That is a fantastic story. That is an isolated guy because everyone else has not elevated their game. You can go through the entire defensive backfield. You could talk about Everson Griffin, who was a big acquisition, has not played up to snuff. And then you can wonder about the defensive coordinator they brought in, Mike Nolan. Is there any scheme involved? All I see from the last few weeks is Matt Ryan and, of course, Russell Wilson lighting this team up through the sky. And I just don't know if this is a recipe for success for the Cowboys when you add in the fact that at the final play of these last two games, they can't get it done. I mean, yes, you get the onside kick, and that is a wild deal. But that one was almost a gift from the Falcons. I'm not going to take it away. I would just say that was a watermelon kick away, Kay, like you said, from being 0-3. And then last week, the interception at the end. You can't put your offense in this situation where they have to bail you out with 40 points every game. It's just not a winning formula in the NFL. The defense has to give you something, as we saw the Chiefs did down the stretch last year.
Yeah, I don't want to pile on the defense, but you're right. Collectively, they haven't been playing up to snuff. Good. I feel like Snuffleupagus when I'm watching the games. Like, oh, here we go. Is this defense going to stop anybody? You know, I don't want to be that guy on TV because most players will get on TV and act like they never played the game and they're too big for it. And, oh, you guys have to stop somebody. It's all on you. But I do feel like there is something to a defense as talented as the Cowboys. And that's what it boils down to. As talented as they are, even with the injuries that they have, giving up 30-plus points a game. That's not the defense that I thought was going to show up this year. And I know, Kyle, you're going to talk about the offense in a little bit. The offense hasn't been perfect. They've dug a hole for their team in the beginning of games. They've had some very odd, balanced games when it comes to passing and running. But the defense, when are you going to make a statement game? This league is built around offense, right? We protect their quarterbacks. They stand up, right? They throw the ball downfield. Some people say it's like 7-on-7. But when a defense shows up, when a defense is dominant, it stands out. Not only does it stand out, but it reinvigorates the team. We remember when Seattle had Russell Wilson, but it was their defense we were talking about with Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor and all those dogs on the defensive line. Like when a defense plays well, look at the Patriots. We talk about Tom. And as soon as that defense plays well, it changes everything. The point I'm trying to make is Cowboys. As much as we can talk about how great Dak is and is he going to get the big contract, Zeke Elliott, keep feeding them, the wide receivers, everybody's putting up 1,000 yards, 3 people each. How about you guys make a statement game? How about you control the narrative? Who cares about what's happening on the offense side of the ball? I'm tired of talking about them. I want to wake up on Monday and talk about the Dallas Cowboys defense. Hold somebody to 10 points. And with all that said, the Browns are a good offense. You got your hands full.
Yeah, I don't think that's this team here. I don't see a statement either. The statement has been made by the Browns. There was a long time when you would scan your schedule and look for those beautiful 3 letters, CLE. Yes, that's Browns week. We need an easy one. I think this is a really bad matchup for Dallas because Dallas's best asset right now is, well, we got weapons. We can go up and down the field. So does Cleveland. Like, you don't want to have a bad secondary against this team, especially this team when Baker's starting to believe in himself a little bit. Giants
1 minute
in 2 weeks. Thank goodness. Although that will also be the Jason Garrett return to Jerry World, so be careful there. But I don't want any piece of this right now. As confused and as ugly and as all over the media as the Cowboys are, they need that easy week, and the Browns are not going to provide it. You know, as a parent, when you've done like 3 straight hours of, well, I picked him up from soccer, and then I emptied the dishwasher, and then they loaded the dishwasher, and I teach the kid how to tie his shoes. Can I just have a 30-minute period where I sit there and look at my phone and watch House Hunters? That's what the Cowboys
30
now. That disengaged period. Sometimes you've used it in the restroom, and you lock the door, and you're there for 2 hours. They need that bad. Get your act together. Shore up the defense a little bit. Calm everybody down with a nice 31-20 win. I do not think that is Cleveland. I don't even think it's close. It's the first time I've said this maybe in my life. You
Stand by.
play the Browns right now if you're Dallas. It's exactly the team you don't want to face. You'd rather have someone who's struggling on offense. They're not. They're firing. I do not think there is a statement coming here from the Cowboys.
You're up.
All right. Well, I like that. I like the statement from Mr. Brandt there and the confidence. You don't want to face the Browns right now. We put on 30 back-to-back games, a chance to do it again against this Dallas defense that really has struggled. Now, if you were going to say what's the one area that they've actually been pretty okay, they're holding opposing running
Can I
backs.
do that? Hey, Z.
Yeah.
Hey, Z, what area have they been pretty okay?
Well, they've actually been pretty okay against opposing running backs. That's because you can throw it on them. And you're saying, well, wait a second. If you can throw it, you're not going to run. But they're only giving up 3.7 yards per carry to opposing runners. That's 10th best in the NFL. The Browns, by the way, 3.3, 6th best in the NFL. But you can attack this team, and there are a couple ways to attack them. We know about throwing the football. We've mentioned that. You've got to protect up front. Aldon Smith, Everson, Griffin, between the two of them, 22 pressures so far already this year. So they've been spectacular in that respect. They've got a combined 5 sacks. But let's go into the coverage. Let's go into this secondary. Let's go into these linebackers. Your safety, Darian Thompson. He's given up a quarterback rating of 155.8 when targeted so far this year. 77% completions, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Let's talk about the 2 linebackers, Joe Thomas and Jalen Smith. Joe Thomas and Jalen Smith have been targeted 31 times this year. They've given up 24 catches this year, 306 yards, 2 touchdowns, quarterback rating of nearly 130. Safety, linebacker. Then they've got Trevon Diggs, who I think is going to be a very good player in the league, but they're taking advantage of this rookie. He's already been targeted 22 times, 15 catches, 223 yards, 2 touchdowns, quarterback rating of 131.4. That's where you can get this team. The safeties have struggled. Xavier Woods has probably played the best of anybody on their defense so far this year. He's still given up 80% completions and a quarterback rating of 80 when targeted. You can get to this team. 9 touchdowns on the season allowed, 9 in the last 2 weeks. The yards we know that they've given up just the last 2 weeks alone. You can get after this defense, and it starts with Darian Thompson and the 2 linebackers. So that means if they're playing zone, getting your receivers into the middle of the field, similar to what teams try to do to us, getting your tight ends involved. This would be a great week for Austin Hooper and Harrison Bryant to work on those safeties and those linebackers of the Cowboys.
You know, it's interesting. The teams they've played, I think we would define all 3 as elite pass offenses when you talk about the Rams, the Falcons, and certainly the Seahawks. I mean, they've played 3 of the best passing attacks in football. They have not had to play a team anything at all that resembles us. The Rams go about it the same way, but they do not, and they weren't healthy at running back when the Rams played them in week 1. I don't think Henderson played in that game at all.
Brown ran for 100 and something yards that week, and I know because I spent a ton of my waiver wire budget on him, and now they're like, oh no, Darrell Henderson's the guy. You didn't see him run 20 times for 114 yards and a touchdown a week.
No. Malcolm Brown played in that game, but I don't believe Henderson played. I think he was still trying to come back from an injury, so very little. And so they haven't played anybody like us. Obviously, the Falcons to their detriment. No, true. The Falcons, to their detriment, don't run the football, do not have it, and neither do the Seahawks because they don't need to. They just watch us outscore you. That's obviously their philosophy this year. So I don't know. I guess what I'm wondering is how much can you extrapolate from what happened for what this will be, because this is almost it's apples and avocados in terms of what the approach will be.
So what's interesting about it is that the Rams did run the ball in that game 18 times for Malcolm Brown, 14 times with Cam Akers, Henderson only 3, 35 carries, 124 yards, 3.5 a carry. Next game, the Falcons, remember, they had the huge lead. They were trying to suss it away. They were trying to squeeze the football. Gurley, 21 carries, 61 yards, 2.9 a carry. So they did commit to it. And then last week, Seahawks, 20 carries, 95 yards. Carson, though, 14 for 64, 4.64. He was injured in that game.
Falcons didn't so much commit to it as did it trying to take the ball. Like, they came out throwing.
Totally. That's how they built their lead. They built their lead
game.
throwing and tried to run
Built
to
it that
victory
way.
and couldn't.
Slinging it.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it. So this is going to be just an entirely unique approach.
Totally.
Based on who this team has played. There are plays to be made. I'm curious. I thought that was really interesting what you brought up about the two linebackers, and I'm wondering how they will be in run stopping, frankly, because they haven't had to. This is going to be so different than anybody that they've played against. How is Darian Thompson coming down and helping in run stuffing? What does that look like? They've primarily been able to play two linebacker sets. What does it look like? Will they be in base?
That's what they've
How are they
played a
going to
ton.
go about it?
Yeah, they're probably going to have to be in more base than they've been so far this year. And you look at their linebackers, Joe Thomas, Jalen Smith. Behind that, you've got Luke Gifford, Justin March. Not a lot that we're familiar with, or guys that have really played a lot. And so maybe they go with three safeties and bring a Donovan Wilson or a Brandon Carr. Brandon Carr's been on the field quite a bit for them. He's struggled this year as well. Jordan Lewis giving up a quarterback rating of 110. Yeah, it's interesting. They list their starters with 4 defensive linemen and Alden Smith as though they were playing a 5-man 5-2-4, which they do not play with great frequency. We did see some 5 defensive linemen from the Washington football team last week. But I think that's a very good question. Alden Smith's been great. You do want to try to run at him and try to slow him down on his way to the quarterback. But this defense hasn't been good. It has not faced anybody like us. But at the same time, I do think we are more capable of playing a game like the Falcons did or like the Seahawks did than the Seahawks or the Falcons are capable of playing like we do.
No question. We just haven't shown that.
Correct.
But I don't think they're capable of it. So I think that to your point. I mean, that's really your point, is that we haven't shown it. They're not capable. The Rams really are, and we have far more talent at running back than they do. They're further along in the passing game, but they are kind of our doppelganger in terms of who they've played.
Sure.
The way that the Rams go about their business, and they were, Goff had some big plays in that game. It wasn't a track meet, but he had some big plays in that game, and there were some big chunk plays out of play action. Huge chunk plays to Robert Woods, if my memory serves, in that game. I think Robert Woods had a pretty good game.
Boy, does it. 6 for 105 in that game, Robert Woods.
There you go.
They've given up a 100-yard receiver in every game. Week 1, Robert Woods, 6 for 105. Week 2, Ridley, 7 for 109. Week 3, Messieurs Lockett and Metcalf, both. Lockett, 9 for 110 and 3 touchdowns. DK Metcalf, 4 for 110 and a touchdown. The weeks before that, Calvin Ridley had 2 touchdowns. Russell Gage had a touchdown as well for the Falcons. So they've given up a 100-yard receiver every single game this year. The Browns don't have a 100-yard receiver on the season. This is a game. Look,
isn't Odell 74 his biggest?
Yes,
our biggest.
That's right.
In week 2.
That's right.
Yeah,
we've had 100-yard rushers, tons of them. We can do that. We got that going. But this is a game, and this is one you think Odell and it was Giants, Cowboys, and Dallas seem to open the NFL season every week, or be a Sunday night every year, or be a Sunday night game every year. This is his game, and it's there for him. I think that it's going to be interesting to see. Could Darryl Hodge, or is this a game, with JoJo Natson not up? Does Higgins get run? Maybe we're crazy. I felt like I saw it at training camp. We must be, because, look, they're there every day. We don't get to see all these practices. He hasn't been active. But this feels to me like a game where you put, you saw what DK Metcalf did, and I'm not saying Donovan Peoples-Jones is DK Metcalf, but what you saw what a big, tall, fast receiver could do to this Dallas defense. Maybe this is a week you put him in some 3-receiver sets and say, go.
Run past them.
Run right by him.
Yeah, Russell Wilson just threw it over their heads. I mean, consistently in the game. And I realize he's the best deep ball thrower in the National Football League, but there are plays to be made. Matt Ryan did that in the first half of their game as well. To their plays, and and certainly Goff on those rollouts, as my memory served well in this instance to Robert Woods is something where there are plays to be made. And I think, Baker playing in Dallas, he'll be wanting to play at a very, very high level. It just means more. It's one of those places that you play. It's probably the place you play in the NFL when you're a player, where probably in the back of every NFL player's mind, they wanted at some point to be a Dallas Cowboy, and you want to play well at that stadium. It's just what it is. You know that all the eyes are going to be on you, and it's just one of those games you want to play well in, and especially for guys who are from the South. like Odell and Jarvis are. So there's just such a romantic notion to the Dallas Cowboys. So I'm sure that they will be motivated to have very, very big games on Sunday, and here's hoping that they do. The plays are there to be made. Be interested to see how we attack it. Are you a sports fan looking for a part-time weekend job? Get into the action at First Energy Stadium, home of your Cleveland Browns. Wes is now hiring for part-time event staff and security. Apply online at westhiring.com, WESS hiring.com. All right, you're going to hear from Coach Preef. You're going to hear from Jarvis, Odell. Lots of fun coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. If you like to play the lottery or gamble in other ways, don't take unnecessary risks. Be sure you know the odds and what you're getting into before you bet. If you want to learn more, go to keepitfunohio.com for helpful tips, interesting quizzes, great games to help you keep gambling fun. A cavalcade of stars at the podium today. Let's start with Coach Prefer on the loss of JoJo Natson, following that up with how the team might replace him. Interesting question here.
You know, I talked to JoJo. I called him. I saw him in the locker room after the game and called him Sunday night, and he was so positive. He was still holding on to hope that he'd be okay and be a few weeks he'd be out. But obviously, as you guys know, he's done for the year. And my heart breaks for him. My heart breaks for me and us and our special teams because he was just starting to hit his stride, I think. And you know, as the weather got colder, we're going to hopefully get more opportunities, especially in the kickoff return area. But you know, that's going to hurt our football team because he's worked very, very hard to be the type of return that we needed him to be. And obviously his talent and his work ethic and his attitude were great. So we're going to miss him, and he's going to be tough to replace.
Can you kind of walk us through what you're thinking about in trying to fill those shoes? I obviously know you got a few candidates that you've had here for a while, and then you just signed Ryan Switzer. It was announced this morning to the practice squad.
You know, we've worked guys. We've worked Donovan. We've worked Dontrell, DeErnest. Ryan will certainly be in play either this week or next week. You know, it just depends on you know, how quickly we can get him ready if we need him. So we have some candidates. You know, they're all different type returners than JoJo. So we've got to adjust a little bit of what we do. But you know, that's why we're paid as coaches and players, and we got to go out and do our job.
You're up. Boy, we had in camp Donovan Peoples-Jones and JoJo Natson. It was the two of them.
Yep.
Every punt, every kick. Those were the two guys. So I'm interested to see what happens here in the return duties.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating one to watch, and I think that, you know, the word is trust, right? Do they trust the rookie to go out there and make plays, or would they, you know, Preefs worked with Dontrell Hilliard last year. He was the one who was our kick returner last season, did a nice job at the good return, remember, to set up what was a great first half against Seattle. So that's going to be the one that's interesting to see. I often think that coaches, you know, tend to go in a pressure crunch, quick turn situation, go with what they know and what they've seen. And you know, what they know and what they've seen is Dontrell Hilliard more than Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think that you and I and certainly many fans of the Browns and those listening to this program, all they want to do is let's unleash Donovan Peoples-Jones and see what he can do with the ball in his hands. That's how he started his career really at Michigan, was as a returner. Was a freshman All-American in that role. So it's going to be interesting. I would probably say, you know, if you're paying attention to the scores, I would probably lean Dontrell at this point just because of the experience. Yeah. But we'll see how that plays out. We know that Ryan Switzer, who has been a good returner in this league and was added to the practice squad today. So he's somebody that maybe not this week, but in the near future they could see elevating into that JoJo Natson role once perhaps, say, Kareem is back and certainly ready to go, and you wouldn't need to have 4 running backs on the active roster.
No, not at all. Two guys, well, certainly, and Jarvis has done this in terms of catching punts in his career and been very, very good at it. Jarvis was asked, if you've seen, I talked about this earlier about Baker on the NFL Films that's made this social media rounds, running up to Odell and Jarvis after he threw the touchdown to Harrison Bryant, saying, I got you guys, be patient, I'll get you, you know, that type, or something to that effect. Here was Jarvis when he was asked about that.
I mean, he has the awareness, you know, he understands just as well as I'm sure as everybody on this call or everybody that watches our games understands, you know, when you guys, we want the ball, you know, there's no question about that. And, but obviously the biggest and most important thing is winning, you know, and we're going to do whatever it takes each and every time we touch the field to make sure that we're winning. And right now that's been in the running game. So, you know, we're embracing our role as blockers, you know, but, you know, we definitely want to be able to contribute in the passing game as well.
Does it bug you that you haven't had that first touchdown yet?
Stand by.
I mean, Chubb and Kareem was making it pretty hard for me to even have a chance in the red zone. So hopefully, we'll get some chances here soon.
You're up.
You want touchdowns, but I think it's more just the opportunities in the flow of the game is probably what's wanted more.
Yeah.
And it's what you'd want to see.
It is, but these guys are absolute pros, and he said exactly what we said the segment before. Of course I want it. Of course I want it. Of course I know that I can help this team win. But, you know, the truth is Nick Chubb's not just scoring 1-yard touchdowns. He's scoring from 20, 19, 16. You know, those are sometimes you matriculate it closer, and then the receivers end up getting the touchdowns. Our passing touchdowns have been one bomb to Odell, a 1 yard pass to the Chief, and a 3 yard pass to Harrison Bryant.
Yep. Yeah, that's where you're at on that. The other side of that receiving tandem is Odell Beckham Jr. We talked about him with the Hoff on Monday, and here is Odell Beckham Jr. on the opportunities in front of him.
Absolutely. I mean, it's amazing. I haven't seen the new LA Stadium, and I've seen the new Atlanta Stadium. This is one of those ones, where I feel like those stadiums kind of took a little bit of that atmosphere. So it's just an incredible environment, beautiful place. Always excited to be able to.
You're up.
So that is a small B moment out of me. That was about the stadium rather than about the offense. So that is about the Dallas Stadium, of which he is quite familiar with, and
I don't
am
blame
quite
you.
familiar with it. Now you will. Thank you, sir. You will get your first view of it on Sunday, and I look forward to your review.
I'm very excited to be there. There was another quote from Odell today that I've at least seen on Twitter, and I don't know, Gibbe, if you heard it or not, which was that he has two goals for the season, or the offense, 2 goals, 1 win games, 2, Nick Chubb be the leading rusher in the NFL. Made no mention of his own personal goals. And again, Odell is doing everything you could possibly want him to do. As a Browns fan, as a player, the last 2 weeks, incredibly efficient. I think he's turned 12 targets into 8 catches, about 125, 130 yards, over 10 yards a target and a touchdown. That's all you can ask for him. Now, what he would say is, hey, let's have that be one game, right? 12 targets, 8 catches, $130 and a touchdown. That's probably what he's more used to, as opposed to that being spread over 2 weeks. But what you're seeing is that efficiency that is there.
Yep. Yeah, that's it. And in terms of where we are in the rushing title, currently 27 yards behind Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, and Dalvin Cook, slightly ahead of Nick Chubb on that as well in terms of accomplishing that goal. One other guy we want to hear from is Joel Bitonio. Let's hear from Joel now on our 2 backs.
Yeah, it's a difference for sure. I don't think Chubb has ever spoken the huddle one time, since I've been here. It's just the same face, the same guy. I think maybe he smiles for a couple minutes after we win a game, and then he's back to the same serious guy, working and preparing for the next week. And Kareem's a little bit more vocal out there. He's not afraid to dish it with the defensive players and let people know. And he'll try and hype up the O-line. Like, he is a vocal guy. He's probably one of the most vocal guys once we get in the huddle. Kareem is, and Chubb is literally the opposite. So it's fire and ice out there.
You're up.
It really can't get more different than the two of them. Like Chubb.
No.
You remember the story with our video team told about when they mic'd up Chubb?
Yeah.
They didn't even open. He didn't say anything.
Nothing until it was we ended up winning 40-25. I don't think he said one word. And this is a guy who had $165 and 3 touchdowns rushing that game, including an 80-yarder. He didn't say a word until it was, because they scored late to make it 40-25. I think when it was 40-17, 40-18, whatever it was, that's when he finally started talking a little bit. All business. And Kareem loves to talk. Kareem loves the physicality. He loves it all. Nick does too. Just their approaches are totally different. Different strokes. Takes different strokes to move the world. Yes, it does.
Good job out of you.
Yeah.
One final segment up next.
So much more.
So much more. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. Zenith is committed to athletes as they are to the game. Zenith helmets designed with an uncompromising attention to fit, feel, style, and safety. Learn more at zenith.com. That is zenith.com. And a reminder, Browns fans, tonight at 7, the Kevin Stefanski Show presented by Howard Hanna on the University Hospital's Cleveland Browns Radio Network. Coach and linebacker Malcolm Smith will join the Z and me on the program tonight. This is brutal Thursday night. I mean, it's almost embarrassed we got to do a scores for it. I'm almost embarrassed.
No, stop it. This is
bad.
Come on, the nephew of
It's
Mark
bad.
Rippon in prime time, making his debut, undrafted free agent quarterback. The battered Broncos taking on the leaking oil Jets. I mean, there's going to be a story of redemption here. Is it Darnold's redemption? Is it Rippon's redemption?
No. Well, the good news
no
is you
redemption.
two can't screw it up any worse than you did last Thursday night.
Ooh.
Are you kidding me? Listen,
Gibby.
hey, Gibby. I believe I went 11-5
That's
last
right.
week
Yeah.
on the scores. 11-5.
Yeah, but one of those five was last
We were a
Thursday
combined
night.
8 games over 500, Gibby. Back off.
Yeah, what do you want, Gibby? Combined 8 games over 500 between
Last
the two.
Thursday.
Right now,
Last Thursday,
if
there was
Z and
bad
I go to the
information, it
desert
sounds
right
like.
now,
Yeah,
no. If Z and I go to the desert right now, we're getting the Rain Man suite.
that's right. And guess what? You know who's not invited? You, Gibby.
It's okay.
No, you're in Fremont.
You
You're
don't
down
want- you
on
can't
Fremont
hang with
riding that zip line.
Yeah, you're on the zip line, Gibby.
Totally fine. I've never been
Trying
on a
to play
zip
nickel
line.
slots.
Nickel sluts. $1 blackjack tables. The Sands.
That's it. High rollers. That's where we are.
That's right.
Villas.
All because of the
Plaza.
scores. All because of the scores.
All because of the scores.
All I know is maybe one score last week was a little bit off.
But you know what? What we did was what you needed to
What, are we
realize.
gonna
We
be
gave
perfect?
perfect information. But we
There-
did give
no,
great
there was
information.
not
problem.
perfect
That was the one to do the opposite on.
Not on
sometimes,
Thursday.
Do
sometimes
the opposite.
you were
Good
paying
information.
attention to pay attention to the scores. That was a clearly let's do the opposite here.
Yeah, I think we made that pretty clear.
Duh.
I mean, you can't have us going 16-0 every week.
What's the fun in that?
I know you're used to perfection from us.
There are people that are
Jeez.
texting me that would disagree strongly with your takes right now.
Listen, hey, pay attention to all of the scores.
All of them.
And then you'll be fine.
That's right.
Pay attention to all of the scores.
We try to listen. The faithful, we're giving them winning material every week on the reg. But those who are
Just
the
except on
true,
Thursday night.
the
I just
truth
said you had a-
faithful, we
you had
have
a rough
to
night last Thursday.
we-
So let's see if we can be better.
see what
today.
he doesn't understand is that sometimes there are little nuggets that are truly for those that I would say are in the family that they know. We can't give all the winners to all the casual listeners. Sometimes there's something secret that's kept behind that you have to decode. Gibby,
Just pay attention.
Pay attention to the scores.
Meaning by that you mean the opposite of what you said last Thursday.
But there was a tip that was given. That's like a signal. Like
There was a tip. There
Yeah,
was a tip.
you just
It was
weren't
given.
on it.
There was a. You
Give
had to
the
pay
score,
attention
I
to
think
it.
we're up against it.
What do you got today here, Coach? Where are you at on this nonsense? This is a bad one.
The only thing I care about in this game is Noah Fant's performance from a fantasy standpoint. So let's go
30.
Broncos. Mile High Miracle
Yeah.
in New York.
One team has culture. One team doesn't. I'm big on culture. Denver wins. I got Denver as well, taking care of business. Oh, we're back
But what
tomorrow
does it
for a full
actually
slate
mean?
of the scores. Oh, who knows?
Find out.
Next level coming up next.
Find out tonight around 11:30.
There you go. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN.